I've carried a pocket knife in my pocket every day of my adult life, and it is the most useful thing I own, and I will yell it from the mountaintops that everybody should do the same. So when my friend Jason came to me and said,
hey, we should do a folding chisel knife.
why don't you just stand up?
Oh, sorry.
Such a weirdo. Wait, so you said we should make a folding chisel pocket knife?
I wondered why, in a world of woodworkers, there isn't an everyday carry chisel knife. Because to be honest, the knife is great, but I would rather have a chisel blade because it's just more useful in my shop.
Right, when he came to me, because this is a serious endeavor, and there are a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about knives, and there is lots of things to consider: steels, locking mechanisms, handle materials, all those things.
Yeah, and we didn't want to get it wrong.
We had to get it right. And so Jason and I worked tirelessly on it. We even found one of the coolest knife designers in the world, a guy named Mikkel Willemsen from Willemsen, Copenhagen.
Hello, my name is Mikkel, and welcome to Willemsen, Copenhagen. This is my workshop. I've been designing knives for 26 years. Designing for my own company, Willemsen, Copenhagen, making custom knives on my CNC, and designing for companies like SOG, Kaiser Knives, We Knives, Fox Italy, Bogo Knives, etc., etc.
Danish people know what they're doing.
They really do. And we think we brought the best folding chisel knife that could be made to market for you. And pre-sale is starting today, which you can find links down to our website, Jason's website. He's gonna be having t-shirts and stickers as well. The first batch will be shipping in about 3 to 5 weeks, and the second batch will be shipping in about 8 to 12. And in this video, I'm gonna do an in-depth look at the product development process, why we chose certain design aspects, and how we made the world's most bulletproof folding chisel.
You guys say it like this. Yo, buddy, in this video, I'm gonna walk you through all the design choices, product development, exactly why we did what we did.
Yeah, and we're gonna show why we created the world's most bulletproof folding chisel and why it's gonna be the most useful tool you have in your shop.
And why this is gonna be your favorite everyday carry in the shop. I mean, this was made for you, the woodworker, the carpenter, the craftsman, and you're gonna love it.
So, Jason's gonna head back to Oregon. Stick around, it's gonna be cool. They saw you do that. Knives are the most useful tool I own. It is definitely my most used in everyday life. I have different knives that I carry to the shop and different knives that I go to dinner with, but I have one on me at all times because it really is the most useful thing. Chisels are the same way with woodworking projects, right? Like, we have chisels that we use in every single project, but we protect them. We keep them safe. We don't use them to do rough tasks because you don't want to dull your super nice chisel because it is so valuable when you can cut a nice, crisp, sharp line. This patent-pending Bourbon Blade that we spent 2.5 years designing is the chisel and knife for everything else. It is one of the most useful things I've owned. We've dug so deep into the details. We built it from the ground up. We didn't go to a factory and say, hey, can you put my blade on this knife? We built this from the ground up. So much so that we even have a left and a right-handed version. It was so obvious in the prototyping process that you never cut towards yourself, right? That's number one rule of cutting tools. So we realized that this is a left-handed knife because if you were shaving wood, you would have to cut towards yourself. So left-handed cutaway, right-handed you cut away, and it's packed with so many other really cool features. And we had to build it from the ground up, right? Because nobody's ever done something like this. Now, there's been other companies that claim a pocket chisel. FastCap has one that folds out like a butterfly knife, but it's still just a chisel. Columbia River Knife Company did one that was kind of cool, but had a rounded front and a double bevel. It wasn't like a true folding chisel. And having a flat back in the shop has been an absolute game changer. It's so cool, all the things you can do. You can use it as a marking knife. You can use it to clean up fuzz from the CNC. You can scrape glue with it. All the things you wouldn't use your super nice chisel for, this does it all, and it is fantastic. And today in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the features of this knife. I wanna show you how ground up product development looks and like why we weighed different features against each other and chose the ones that we went with, because we built this thing to be a tank. I mean, an absolute tank. It really can take anything you can throw at it, and I'll show you why. This is just some of my knife collection. I am obsessed, and I've become more obsessed as we've developed this product, because I just want to know everything there is to know about a product before I bring it to you and make sure it's the best possible. Now, knives can be very confusing. They all look very similar. A few examples. This is the cheapest knife I own. You'd see this at the counter at Bass Pro Shops or Home Depot. And this is a $300 zero tolerance titanium knife. Very similar looking, right? This is a Boker knife, great company, but they make mid-grade. You know, it's a $50 automatic. And this is a Microtech the Navy SEALs carry that's well into the $300. They look very similar. It's very hard to tell. So there are 4 things that define a knife's quality. And that's blade material. What kind of steel did they use? How big is it? What shape is it? Locking type, that is a very important one. How does it lock? That is the most important one for safety. We're gonna get into that here in just a second. Then build materials, right? Like what is the handle made out of? Is it G10, plastic, aluminum? There's lots of different things that it can be. And then finally, the other accoutrements, the clip, does it have bearings in the opening mechanism? What is the opening mechanism? Is it automatic, spring assisted, manual thumb stud? All those kind of things. I'm going to tell you all the features we put into the Bourbon Blade. I'm going to explain to you why we chose those and not others. I took apart one of our most recent prototypes to show you some of the cool features and that this is a robust tool you're going to want to carry every day and not some other just gimmicky knife that looks like a chisel. Now, first of all, reversible pocket clip. This is the strongest type of pocket clip there is out there. It's a piece of bar steel as opposed to just folded spring steel. We have this steel hammer strike or mallet strike. This is incredibly cool because it is pinned in with 3 pins that go across not only the scales but the liners, and they're screwed in from both sides. The final version has Loctite on those screws, but one of the issues we found in early prototypes is that if you hit the end of a scale, you're going to crack it. In addition, you can put unnecessary pressure on the lock. So what this does is it transfers all that force from the end of the knife directly into the blade, which again has a huge pin in between the liners that allows that force to be transferred really well and not stress any other parts of the knife out, like the lock. The lock, we used a crossbar lock, one of the, if not the strongest lock on the market. The most important part of a tool like this is that it's not going to cut your fingers off. So we had to use the most robust lock. We're going to talk about that in just a second, some of the other options were and why they would be a horrible choice for a chisel knife like this that folds. Ceramic ball bearings, of course, that's going to allow you tens of thousands of flips without failure, and it's just an incredible tool. It's really strong. All right, so let's talk about locks and why we chose the crossbar lock over some of these other options. Now, a lock is the most important part of this. This was our #1 thing when we started developing it, was it has to be bulletproof. And the reason is the worst injury I've ever had was I was using a liner lock knife, a buck knife, to pry out a knot hole from a 4x4. The knife twisted, which disengaged the lock. It shut on my finger and chopped off the tip of this guy. I had to get my ex-wife to go back and pick me up and take me to the hospital, but it taught me a valuable lesson, which is you should trust your tools. So here are the basic lock types. Our first one is a slip joint. It's not really a lock. It's just a piece of spring steel that engages with a flat on the knife so that it keeps it in tension when it's open. And I'm not saying these joints are bad. This is a beautiful custom-made knife that my buddy made. I'll link him down below. He makes incredible knives. So this is one of the most expensive ones on this table, but you just have to be careful when you're using it. You know, if you're just doing basic stuff where you're going exactly in a horizontal or straight motion, these are just fine, and they're real classy. I carry this one when I wear a suit. Then, of course, there's liner locks, the one that tipped my finger off. We'll talk a lot more about those in a second because that was our other option. And then there's a lock back, which uses a bar in the back to, again, gauge with a flat on the blade like that. The only negative to this one is you have to put your hand across the blade to close it, which means it's two-handed closing and your fingers are in the way at some point. Then, of course, the world-famous compression lock by Spyderco. This is where locks start to get really good and really strong. It's one-handed opening and closing, and it's really easy to use. And what it does that is so cool is it takes a pin and it places a steel bar. Sometimes people say, oh, it's just a backwards liner lock. Not even close. It takes a piece of spring steel and puts it in between a pin and your blade, which means that to get this to fail, you would basically have to crush this steel or break this pin. So in tests, the Axis lock from Benchmade or the crossbar lock, which we used, that's in the world famous 940 Osborne from Benchmade. Those are the strongest locks by so much. And then the only other notable locks that I skipped were a frame lock that uses the frame just like a liner lock. Obviously, most of the blades up here are automatics, which I love. They use the crossbar lock. It's just in a little bit different formatted with a spring-loaded opener. So slip joint was a no because obviously it could close anytime. The back lock obviously used 2 hands to close and is not quite as strong as the compression or the crossbar lock. Compression is Spyderco's proprietary and they do it really, really well. So, you know, we didn't go with that one. So that left us with liner locks and crossbar locks. So this was an easy choice. Tests show this has 15% the strength of a crossbar lock. But let's show you why these work and these don't. First of all, just some of the basic issues with a liner lock is they're only right-handed and you have to reach across the blade to close it and move your thumb out of the way. So you're in danger of cutting yourself. But then when you start to look into the applications of a folding chisel and a liner lock, that's where the problem really starts to come in. So this is how a liner lock works. They grind a ramp at the end of the blade. There's a small part, I can show you on this cheapie right here. It's just a small grind. And then a piece of spring steel moves in, and as you can see, there's only a tiny bit of contact. So now you start thinking about our mallet striker here, where we're gonna start whacking this thing. What's gonna happen? Well, you whack the end of a liner lock knife, you are basically hitting the lock into the knife. That is how you are transferring all that force. So you hit it here, and then it hits into these two ramped pieces, right? And we start to think about physics. What's gonna happen when we have two ramps that are put together? When you shock a liner lock, it has three choices, right? It's bend, break, or move. And move is what it's gonna do a lot of the time. So if you were to put force into the end of this knife here, just like that, you're gonna do it. In fact, there's a test for liner locks called the whack test, where they take a liner lock and they just tap it like that and see if it closes. Really just that hard. There's some great videos, I'll link them down below. So it was really obvious that maybe a liner lock holds for a little bit, but if you ever put any like decent amount of force like you're going to when you're chiseling, that's gonna fail. It's gonna fail quickly and it's gonna chop off your fingers. Because how are you holding a chisel blade, right? Like this? Boom, when that fails, that's gonna shut on your hand and be a massive, massive issue. And again, I'm not saying liner locks are a horrible choice for other applications. You know, if you're opening boxes all day or letters, that's a great choice. Sure, these great cheapies are fine to use and a great solution, but when we're talking tools, there's only one option, that is the axis lock. Let me show you why. All right, so to show you how this works, let me take apart this knife and I'm gonna show you the inner working so you can see why these are so strong. All right, so you can see we've gotten the G10 scale off. Everything is very well lubed up, but this is the part of the scale that encapsulates the spring and is going to hold the lock. So you can see there's nowhere for this to go. It's pinned up against the scale, and I'm gonna take this off so you can see what it looks like inside and how it interacts with the blade. All right, so this is the inner workings of it. You can see the barrels that hold the hammer strike on there. And then of course these ball bearings that make opening this so easy. And what happens when you open this, you can see, watch the crossbar lock into place. And what it's doing here is you can see this shelf. So this is what is in the back of a lockback knife, a compression lock, or a crossbar lock, or an axis lock from Benchmade, is they have a shelf ground into it. So when you open it, that lock is gonna lock onto that shelf. And now that's not going anywhere. So ask yourself, when you have a tool that you're using in the shop, would you rather test something that has a whole steel bar that goes across it, or something with a tiny piece of spring steel ground into a ramp like this that's just gonna wear out, get knocked off of there every time it's shocked, and it's real dangerous. So that's crossbar lock. What's great about it too is it's ambidextrous. You can do it left or right-handed, and you don't have to put your hand in the way to close it. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's talk about the steel choice we made, the Sandvik 14C28N, and why it is the perfect steel for this, and why we didn't go with some of the other many, many steels out there on the market. And talking about steel, this is where people can get really opinionated. But one thing that is very true is there is no one characteristic that makes a premium knife steel. There are lots of them. I'm gonna link an amazing test down in the comments where they tested the 30 top steels and where they rank differently compared to each other. Now, a couple of those categories, so the 4 categories that blade steels are rated in, which is edge retention, toughness, corrosion resistance, and ease of sharpening. Now, when you think about some of these, they are polar opposites of each other. And to show you that, I'm gonna give you an example. This is a Spyderco Paramilitary 2 with S90V steel, CPM S90V steel. And this is a $500 Lee-Nielsen number 8 with A2 tool steel. Now, this has about the best edge retention in the game. This will hold an edge forever. This is the exact opposite. Not as good at holding an edge, but it is tough. So when you think about edge retention versus toughness, they're polar opposites of each other. That does not mean that these two are not some of the most premium products on the market. Now, what does that mean? Edge retention. That means that a knife is very hard. So it's very hard to sharpen, but once you get it sharp, it's gonna stay sharp for a long time as long as you're not beating on it. So if you're opening boxes, cutting fabrics, cutting cardboard, those kind of things. This is gonna stay sharp for way longer than the A2 tool steel. But why did Lie-Nielsen choose A2? Because this is a really heavy plane, and it is designed for milling rough lumber. It's gonna run into knots, it's gonna be banged around, it's gonna do so with the inertia of a rhinoceros. So they need it to be tough. That means it's a little bit of a softer steel, which means it's way easier to sharpen. It also means when it bangs into stuff, it's not gonna chip. You're gonna bang into something, and you're gonna be able to strop it real quick. The ease of sharpening, too, on the A2 is amazing. When you think about a tool versus a knife, you want to go with something that is tough and easy to sharpen, because that's going to allow you to do work and work and work and sharpen it quickly. One of the great things about the Bourbon Blade is it's so easy to sharpen. You can sharpen the front bevel in your sharpening jig if you want, and then this bevel is so big and wide, it is so easy to sharpen. So we went with Sandvik 14C28N. It actually rates way tougher than the A2 tool steel, and it's much easier to sharpen. This was originally designed for razor blades by a Swedish company, and so because it is a little bit softer, you can get it way, way sharper. So when you need to get that fine little shaving with one of these, this is a better bet over something like this. The Sandvik 14C28N is used in world-famous Heli bushcraft knives. What do you do with a bushcraft knife? You're gonna be banging on it with a stick to chop logs or cut kindling. Spyderco knives are some of my favorites, but this is not something I would ever use and abuse, because I want it to be nice and sharp and do fine things. In fact, one of the best things, so the Sandvik is a stainless steel. So about a month ago, we dropped one of our prototype blades in a bath of 50% salt. And then 2 weeks later, I took a Spyderco Paramilitary 3, the one I've been showing you the lock that I took apart. So I got the Maximet steel. I put that in the same kind of solution. So let's take those out right now and see what they look like. So before I open these up, just a quick story. Mikkel was instrumental in taking this over the finish line. I was really set on the S30V steel that a ton of Benchmade knives have. In fact, my favorite, the Osborne 940, which I have multiples of, has the S30V. But he said, you know, the Sandvik has a lot of the same similar characteristics. And again, when we talk about real product design, that's what we do here at Katz-Moses Tools. We take great ideas, we get the right people involved, and we can deliver something that is absolutely incredible. And to prove that, you know, what's gonna happen in your shop? You're gonna be using, abusing this thing. It's gonna get wet, it's gonna get finish on it. Let me show you the Paramilitary first. This is, you can see, 50% salt, 50% water. All that salt at the bottom obviously hasn't dissolved yet. Look at this thing, 2 weeks in there, it's pitting, it's starting to deteriorate, and it's just a nightmare. And now, let's take, oh wow, that salt. You really find the cuts on your hand when you've been shooting a video with 70 knives or so. Currently June 11th. This has been in here since May 4th. I want to show you this. Look at this knife. It is perfectly clean. That is the kind of knife steel you want in a tool. It's incredibly easy to sharpen. Out of those 30 that were tested, it's number 3 in toughness. I think it was number 6 in ease of sharpening. And of course, corrosion resistance, it is top of its class. You really can't beat that Sandvik 14C steel, which is why it's used in a lot of high-end kitchen knives. Heli Knives, of course, uses them, and it's an incredible steel. So like at the top of the video, I said there were 4 things that define a quality knife, which was blade material, locking mechanism, handle material, and then of course, the inner workings. All of those, we built this to be a tank and be a tool that you're gonna use every day in your shop. I love this thing. I've been using it for a few months. I know you will love it too. And again, when you're choosing a tool that folds, make sure that you are holding people accountable. If they're not willing to share all the things I shared with you, then maybe that's not worth buying, because this is high quality and accept nothing less. Guys, thank you for your support. It means the world to me. We just got everybody here at Katz-Moses Tools company health insurance. I couldn't have done that without you. It's been a dream of mine as an entrepreneur for 9 years to be able to provide the people that work for me the peace of mind for their health and mental health. We created a fund so that in case they do have a big medical expense, they can borrow from me at 0% interest and not worry about hurting their credit or being evicted, those kind of things. And that is because of your support. I am humbled by it every day. Thank you so much for supporting me, and thank you for Jason and Mikkel, who all were just instrumental in developing such a quality product. Thank you so much. Head over to Cam Tools. There'll be shirts, there'll be stickers. We won't have banners, that's the only one, but we'll have everything else to fit your Bourbon Blade needs over at Cam Tools as well as over at Jason's website. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Stay safe in the shop. Have a wonderful day.